Order Town Council meeting workshop Tuesday, January 23rd, 2024. Do we have an adoption of the agenda for us today? Second, we've got a first and a second. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. So moved. Workshop discussion. Chaplain, Park Master Plan. Sean, you want to take that over and run with it?
Yes, sir. I'm going to walk before I run, so I don't trip at the beginning, but what a wonderful opportunity to build on the last workshop that we had related to parks, where there was consensus around Taylor Family and Patterson Parks. Happy that we've got those in our arsenal. And now we've been on a journey for about a year for both Crossings and Chaplain Park. And I'm excited to present the town council plans that show revisions based on all the feedback and input that we received to date, and to hear your feedback as well as that from the community to advance these initiatives. If we can pull up the Chaplain presentation, we'll dive right in. So, Chaplain Community Park, I'll give you an idea of the agenda. We're going to talk about the project process, how we started assessing the property until where we are today. Give you all an overview of the site history and conditions since it was acquired back in 1995. We'll talk about preliminary plans that were presented in workshops in February. We received feedback and input, informed July plans that were brought to workshop in July, where we received input and feedback, and that's all what has driven the master plans that you'll see here today. We'll have some discussion assessment and then talk about next steps as we like to advance these forward.
Sean, any more questions as you go, or at the end?
I will take the mayor's preference. I can take over.
I think since there's a lot on this, let's do the questions after the presentation's done.
Okay. Project process. Based on the strategic plan, which was built upon the Parks Master Plan and our plan adoption, we began assessing a lot of our park facilities. We've adopted 4 master plans for parks over the past the past year, and these 2 parks were also recommended for master plan revision investment. And so we started that in September of 21, where we really started diving into the preliminary assessment of the properties, developing some preliminary concepts, and then bringing forward the initial preliminary plan for town council review. And that was in February. We had a workshop with town council in February. Again, I walked kind of through this. There was input and feedback from council and the community. We checked in with the Parks and Rec Commission as well to get their feedback, and brought back, revised master plan, conceptual plan in June. Went through that same exercise for input and feedback. Went back to the community and Parks and Rec and Island Rec and got some more input. And we are here in January 2024 to present what we think is an iterative culmination of all the feedback received so far. So here's an aerial of the property back in 1968. You can see it was relatively, I'll say, barren, not a lot of vegetation on the site. And so a lot of the vegetation that we see out there today has been in the last 50 or 60 years. You see in 1994, right before acquisition, some of the vegetation had grown up here. The town acquired this property in 1995. And with the notion for a location for a park to serve the community. And so preliminary planning started shortly after the acquisition. Here's a timeline for how the community park was developed. Again, acquired in 95. Park planning started that same year, working with Parks and Recreation for the plan. And then design and construction in 1999. So you can see between the planning and construction was about a 4-year period. to identify funding and an opportunity to invest in this property. And then less than 2 years after the design and construction were ready to move forward, the park opened to the public. So it's been open for 23 years, 22, 23 years now. It's in basically the same configuration with a few upgrades over the years, but it's, in my opinion, time to invest in this facility to serve the community. So post-park development, you can see in 2005, the condition, you can see the sort of makeshift fields that have been established over the course of time. You can see the condition of the turf and the overall layout of the park. I'm showing this slide because I think it's important to note that when we had Hurricane Matthew and significant amount of debris removal was required, we have 2 debris management sites. One is up at Honeyhorn, and the other is at Chaplin. And so this facility was a secondary debris management site, which was accomplished at in the sort of the open multi-use field sections of the park. So in our disaster recovery plan, this is still identified as a debris management site, same as Honeyhorn. So I just want to make sure that's pointed out. Then you can see present day. Hasn't changed much since 2001, since it was built. You can see the condition of the turf and fields is slightly improved, but I think it's time to really make a commitment to the quality of play out there, to get the programming right, and not to over-program, but to program with intent for soccer and some of the other uses that have come through the input. So it will include tennis and pickleball, dog park, and a few others, and we'll get to that in a minute. So existing conditions, you've seen this at least twice, probably more often than that, but you can see the programming of the park itself, and I won't spend a ton of time on this, but you can see all the way to the left of the screen, the Castnet parking lot. There's usually a couple of cars parked there unless it's a 4th of July or super busy weekend with soccer and beachgoers. You can see the dog park is over kind of in the northwest center, existing tennis facilities with a restroom. There is a concession with restroom facility, relatively central to the park, basketball, some additional restrooms, and 3 multi-use fields as they exist today. There is the beach access at the end of Burks Beach Road, and the parking for this facility serves both the park and beachgoers. The preliminary plan that was brought forward in February had some concepts included in it. There was a request based on the Parks Master Plan, our plan, and input from our programmers to increase the number of multi-use / soccer fields. It was really a commitment to soccer, which is one of the primary activities that occur on this site. And so this included 5 multi-use / soccer fields. It included a town operations building. We have Shore Beach Services, our beach patrol operates right now out of Islanders Beach Park, and making a commitment to that program. And this is a logical place which allows access to both sides of the Folly, but having that facility there. Basketball courts was previously in the program, but covering them to increase playability. Again, maintaining the dog park in a slightly different location, destination playground, maintaining the beach access, providing adequate restrooms and comfort stations, and on this peninsula, really just providing trail access that exists there currently, maintaining that trail, natural trail access, access to the water. There was some discussion about padel, kind of a new racket sport. I hadn't really heard of it until we started working through this, but was able to watch it on ESPN 99, some tournaments, and it's actually a pretty interesting sport, and I'd love to try to play without, blowing out a knee in the future. But so it was a concept that was included for consideration in here. There was also 24 pickleball courts, and the pickleball courts were programmed in an area where the current tennis facilities exist, along with some additional courts over on the Castnet side. And then what we call a multi-use park facility, really what it is, it's up here on the top. It is it's storage, it's operations. It provides, where you're gonna put the goals, where you're gonna store some equipment for, what you're doing there, restrooms, and that's the term multi-use because it's not just one thing, but it accommodates several of the operational items that need to occur on that facility. So this is what was brought forward in February, and this was the input and feedback that we received at the workshop at that time. There was a request to explore including or accommodating a community pool facility at this location. We were asked to review integrating the 24 pickleball courts, Padel, while also preserving the tennis facility that existed on site that was there. Another one was to anchor the corner of Castnet Drive and Singular Beach with the beach operations facility. Relocate the basketball court to the core of the park. And so the basketball programming was a little bit off in a tangent, so relocate that in the core of the park. And then provide safe pedestrian access and crossings. From across William Hilton Parkway. And so that was input and feedback that we received in February. That was used to inform upgrades to the plan. And jumping forward from February, adding the input and feedback into the mix resulted in the plan that we presented to town council in the workshop in June. It maintained 5 multi-use soccer fields. It maintained the town facility for operations. I'm doing that, Mr. Stanford. It maintained the town facility, the operations building for beach patrol. It included the basketball court still is covered. And all the other elements, dog park, destination playground, beach access, restrooms, the natural trail access to the water, and sorry, I was back in February again. Trail access to the water. It did maintain tennis courts, 6 tennis courts that exist there, based on the feedback that we received. It did include some additional elements on the plan to make sure we were identifying intersection improvements for safe crossings from the other side of William Hilton Parkway, the multi-use facility, and then there were multiple alternatives discussed for pickleball and pool. We're not going to show all of them today, but we had in this section a pool facility. We showed a pickleball facility with 24 courts and asked for feedback. And I'll go through the feedback here in just a minute, but we did assess and provide those alternatives for discussion. So based on that plan that we brought in June, this was the feedback that was received. So provide 6 pickleball courts. So rather than the 24 that were shown in a couple of options, provide 6 pickleball courts. That a community pool facility maybe wasn't right for this facility at this time, but we would, as a request to ask staff to consider all alternative sites, including this one, which could be potential in the future. Provide a wider buffer along Singleton Beach Road. So this town operations building was closer to Singleton Beach Road, and so it informed a shift of that building. Enable views from William Hilton Parkway into the park, create these windows that connect the experience as you're moving past, whether in a bike car into the park and connecting the park and back into the community. Provide a sidewalk on the residential side of Burks Beach Road. provided different treatment, and it was identified tabby paver crosswalks that connected from one side of Burke's Beach Road to the other, the residential area to the park. Review the opportunity to reorient the fields. There's a comment about having a north-south orientation of the fields rather than the current orientation for you know, sunrises and sunrises in the east. If you play goalie, you certainly would want to be facing that direction at 8 o'clock in the morning. So to reorient the fields to make them meet the preferred standard for orientation of these facilities. Connect existing parking reservoirs or parking areas. So up here we had a entrance and a parking area, and then we had another entrance off of Castnet and a parking area. So there was input and feedback to connect that to provide alternative access to and through the park. Connect the parking. Locate a large pavilion centered in the multi-use fields. You know, this is important. I've had two boys play travel. They played soccer since they could kick a ball. But as we travel and visit a lot of these facilities, having a facility, a large covered pavilion is very important. One for shade, one for activities. A lot of times you might play multiple games. And the worst thing to do in the summertime for sure is to play a game and just be gassed out there when it's 100 degrees. And so award ceremonies are typically held there. It provides an opportunity to program that space and provide relief to players and parents and grandparents in that facility. So that was an input that was received. And then review an opportunity for a drop off. And that was really in this area, as you come down Burke's Beach Road, rather than go all the way down where it's a little tight and cumbersome to provide that drop off and turn around, was to look and see if there's a more appropriate drop off along that stretch. How am I doing? So all of that, excuse me, all of that input received really for more than a year, but really through those two main workshops out in the public, talking to our partner groups and community, have led us to the draft master plan that's before you today. And I'm going to run through the program, and then we can take some questions before we go to next steps. The program here, again, on this master plan is, again, a commitment to soccer. We're calling them multi-use soccer fields, but really the commitment here is to soccer, high quality. I've seen some really good natural turf fields. I've taken pictures, I've laid in it. And I would love it if the kids at Hilton Head could play on this type of quality of field. It includes a dog park. That's a little over an acre and a quarter dog park. Still provides the beach access. In the park, there's a lot of programming, and it's a big park. There are 5 comfort stations or restrooms scattered strategically throughout the park where that programming exists. Maintaining the natural trail that exists on this little peninsula. You know, there's been several iterations of things to do there, and I think the consensus is let's leave that alone and keep it natural. But historically, there have been footpaths and other trails to provide access, and so we're maintaining that, respecting that. The Island Heritage Gateway, and then the tennis courts. Tennis courts, the same 6 tennis courts. I would expect that if we're upgrading this, then we make sure that the tennis courts are high quality when we were to reopen this park. Safe pedestrian crossings at William Hilton Parkway, and so we maintain those connections and intention to apply safe crossings. Sure that there'll be our continental striped crosswalks and appropriate town facilities. So again, maintaining the operations building over here for beach patrol. You can see it's been shifted off Singleton Beach Road more, and provides about another 30 or 40 feet of buffer on that over what was previously. Basketball court, the recommendation was to locate it, in the core. I think the basketball location, based on the consumption of the basketball court, we can still fine tune the final location, of the basketball court and so not to get hung up on that current location, because I think there's some other opportunities. And so with that, we would say it's TBD. Look at a couple options for that. Multi-use park facility, as I mentioned, it was shifted on this plan. Again, more core to the park, but shifted in a way that allowed this parking to be connected throughout the site. And again, that facility would have storage, restrooms, operational space to serve the park and the programming. Enable views from William Hill Parkway, and so we've identified view shed opportunities that would exist along that William Hill Parkway section through Chaplin. It'd be outstanding to have views in both directions, views of the water on the other side and views into this wonderful community park and investment on the other. Large picnic pavilion has been added, and again, it's central to the soccer programming. That would be used on these 5 fields. We included the Tabby paver crosswalks based on the recommendation that would traverse across Burks Beach Road at appropriate locations. Adding the sidewalk on the residential side of Burks Beach Road. And then, as I mentioned, connecting the parking where it was truncated with 2 separate accesses. It allows connectivity through the park. And on this one, based on feedback, was to still provide a commitment to pickleball, while maintaining the tennis. And so there are 6 pickleball courts that are programmed sort of in the center of this facility, and could be accommodated in the programming on this master plan for this park. Just quickly, we have included the parking program. Existing parking for this facility is 382. The provision for parking within this master plan is 671, so there's a significant increase in parking. I know those that have kids playing soccer on Saturday, especially when it's a nice day, it's difficult to try to find parking, and so there's some additional parking that would serve this. So that's the draft master plan that we are presenting to town council for feedback and input today, as long as we hear from the community. And happy to take questions at this time before we move on to the next steps.
So anybody have any questions or comments?
I do not play pickleball, but I know that it is the most rapidly growing sport in the country. I know we have a lot of people playing pickleball, and I'm not happy about reducing the number of pickleball courts from 24 to 6. 24 makes sense to me, still makes sense to me. I don't know what in this redesign pushed those courts down to 1/4 of what they proposed use for.
Mr. Allen?
Following up on Mr. Stanford's line of questioning, again, when I go to the pickleball situation, we did have the concept of 24 pickleball courts at one point. We also had a question about whether to put a pool in this area or not. I know you've put 18 pickleball courts in the location we're about to take up next. Couple of questions about the pickleball. Will they have bleachers apply to both tennis and pickleball? Will they have bleachers for public seating?
I can answer each one of the points as we go along if you'd like.
Please do.
If I go back to first to Mr. Stanford's comment. So when we presented the options in June for both the pool and the pickleball, I would say some people supported a pool, some didn't. Some people supported the 24 pickleball courts, some didn't. So we're bringing forward a master plan where there was a sense of agreement on these elements. And if council is in agreement on something that's not shown here, I can provide direction today, that will be great. As far as, Mr. Alford's question about bleachers, I don't think the 6 pickleball courts would be stadium style. But we have, and Brian maybe can correct me, the 6 pickleball courts we built at Old Schoolhouse Park have seating areas, they have shade sails, which allow people that are waiting, and watching, to observe it, but not a stadium style pickleball facility.
Couple rows of benches.
Yes, I believe, yes. The seating opportunities at the pickleball facility on Old Schoolhouse Park.
Yeah, we have benches along the outside of the court and when the,
Was any consideration, given that the number here was reduced significantly just to 6, was any consideration given to putting perhaps another 6 pickleball courts in the operations building area? At least one of the drawings does show pickleball courts there.
I certainly can answer that. The options that were presented previously did have a more robust 24 pickleball court facility. There was the initial plan, if you recall, eliminated tennis and added pickleball where the tennis is, and then added more pickleball, I would say on the Castnet side. Where there was agreement in June was, we weren't sure about the pool for this facility, and we weren't sure about a 24 pickleball court as a collective council from input. There's opportunity at this park to include more pickleball. So we would need direction from town council to add that in before we finalize.
None of these plans have, for the parks, as far as I know, have a pool in them. Is that correct?
Correct, that is correct. And as I mentioned, you know, the feedback that we received in June was, I think a few members of council would like to see a pool here, or at least supported it. Okay. The options that were presented for consideration in June, that some supported a pool concept, and that would consume some portion of the property. We showed a pool located at the Castnet site, which is the sort of bottom left here. We also showed a pickleball complex, for lack of a better term, which had the 24 pickleball courts in the stadium court. There wasn't consensus from council in June to add either of them. What we've said from the pool standpoint is that we'll assess all alternative sites for potential pool location. The high school is also going through some renovations, and it may be appropriate to have some discussion with members of the school district and Island Rec to see if there's an opportunity in and around that facility to add a pool. So we're ready to do that. It's not precluding a pool from occurring at this site, but based on the input direction from June, it was, we're not ready to add it into the program at this time. So we are not recommending including it unless town council provides some different direction here.
For comments?
Sean, one nuance to that Castnet site is the parking that comes along with either pickleball or pool being. That's the real stress point. As we look at that, it's a nice green site open for development, but we would have to reconfigure that parking and try to get more in there, or cause for longer walks to the main body of the parking, which is a fair haul for either pickleball players or pool goers.
If I could, I'll jump in. Last time we were here, I went over a bunch of notes that we had. We were trying to put, right, if you go back a few slides, not to make you do that, Sean, we were trying to put probably 20 pounds in a 15-pound bag when we showed 24 pickleball, potentially a pool, keep the tennis, definitely improve the soccer, multi-use space, add parking, keep dog park, still allow some sort of nature trails. There's so many beautiful, amazing trees on the north side of this property that we're trying to respect. What we started to find was just an imbalance between a wish list of program comparable to parking. And that's why I think that parking slide is important, because what's not on this plan that really impacts this park is beach parking, right? Especially peak season, especially summertime. And a lot of folks that are here enjoying our island, especially in some short-term rentals that aren't on the beach or behind a gate of a planned unit, master planned community, this is their beach. No matter what we try to say, even if we try to move the Google pin to Coligny, this becomes the folks' beach. And we've surveyed some folks during the summer to see where they're coming from. And a lot of folks, it's a group of 3 or 4, 5 or 6 coming from a short-term rental. And I would say that is something that we try to calibrate here. We are, in the next deck, there's 16 pickleball courts? 12. And we could probably fit some more. And could we fit more than 6 here? Yes. It's just trying to fit that 24 court, that stadium, that ESPN zone stadium court has been proven much more difficult at Chaplin and much more difficult at Crossings without giving something up that we already need. So I think I just want to make sure I add that ingredient, because that's what we've really grappled with over the last bunch of months internally with our team and our design expert, but also last time and the time before that we were all here with you. We hear pickleball is important, and we hear soccer is important, and it's that balance that I think we should really scrub today.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Mark, and for your comments. They certainly are relevant to the reason things have laid out the way they seem to be coming together here at the Chaplin Park site. One point that we started off with is our disaster plan, where we have to keep in mind that this is a site that we use. And so the fields have to be left open. And I think the point that you just made, Mark, is that this is a limited site. And in previous iterations, there were way too many things trying to be crammed into this small site. Certainly it could be fit like a puzzle if you wanted to, and then you would lose the character of what Hilton Head Island is all about. We're not about shoving as much as you can into every piece of land available. I think this does justice to keeping the integrity. One part that I would like to, though, focus on that concerns me is opening those windows up into the park. And the reason it concerns me is because we've not yet addressed the issues with William Hilton Parkway itself. The traffic is too intense, the speeds are too high, and this is the only stretch of 278 that does not have a planted median. And so when you look across that highway, you see nothing but macadam, which just makes all the traffic seem that much more heavy and that much more urbanized. And so I have asked 5 years, if not more, that we address that situation. There's no reason that from the Folly Field area through the Shelter Cove area, it's barren. So prior to taking away the only vegetation that keeps this literally park-like, it's taken away, please respect that and leave that vegetated as is. When you solve that problem, you want to come back and create some windows, I'm going to be far more agreeable. But as long as Hilton Head Parkway remains as it is, I'm not going to be in a position to support that. So that's one point. And I realize there have been dirt paths that some have used unofficially around that bottom little peninsula area. But it's another point again that I've made repeatedly. Those are few and far between times when people wander back there. But if we make it an official pathway, it's one more place where our environment gets trampled on and the natural habitat gets invaded. There are rookeries back there, there are alligators who live back there, there's all sorts of wildlife, and there's absolutely no necessity to create an intentional pathway around that peninsula. Leave it. Let it be one of the natural zones left on the island. I appreciate the fact that the turnaround is moved further up. However, if a traffic study were done, you would find that literally on any given day, much less a given day in the height of the season, Burke's Beach Road has literally thousands of cars that go up and down it. Those going to the beach, those going to the park, those going to play tennis and all of the rest, those coming out of Seaside and Surfwatch and Bradley Circle, who cross Burke's Beach and use Castnet, that strip going through the park, to get to Singleton and out to 278. The intensity of the short-term rental market in that area. So I'm worried about the traffic flow with having that drop off there. I'm not saying I'm opposed to it. I just want to hear a little bit more about how that gets managed in that area. The dog park, I'm happy to see that it's retained. The basketball court, the connection through the park is far better than it ever has been. I'm very happy for my residents in Ward 4 that those communities, those neighborhoods, both on the Burke's Beach side and the Singleton side and further down towards the ocean are being thought of and considered and respected because those are neighborhoods. So for now, those are the things that I wanted to mention. Other than this, those crossovers from the residential side on Burke's Beach, other than that one that happens at that Castnet kind of corner, with all of the traffic that I was just referring to, you're just creating another safety issue. And so I don't really see the point in it. Save yourself the trouble and don't create a safety concern. Thank you.
Other comments? Bryson?
I'm going to talk about pickleball in a minute, but before I forget, I wanted to ask about two other things. First of all, a friend, Frank Babel, pointed out to me that there's not any provision for bike parking for bike racks. And so I think we need to make sure that we include that in this plan. And then secondly, I remain concerned about the connecting parking. And I know the fire chief is behind me. Hopefully he will not leave me when I ask about this, but I'm concerned about the speed of traffic coming through there where you have those straightaways. I like the connected parking for other reasons, but I'm very concerned about that becoming a throughway where you've added connected parking up closer to Burke's Beach intersection. So now that I've talked about those points, let me talk about pickleball. First of all, I've always maintained that we need pickleball, and I'm firmly committed to that. I don't think this plan plus the other plan provide enough pickleball courts yet. I'm extraordinarily dismayed that we now have reduced from 24 pickleball courts to 6 pickleball courts at Chaplin. And when I think about what should we do about some of these new park proposals, I thought, how can I decide this? I'm listening to input. I'm looking at plans, I'm listening to staff, presentations. But I thought, you know what? I probably ought to look back at the Parks and Rec Master Plan and our plan. And here's what it says about Chaplain Park, amongst other things. Rebuild the tennis and add a pickleball complex, 24 pickleball courts, clubhouse, pro shop, and support amenities, parking and plaza with restroom buildings, under the final recommendations. Then I look over another couple pages, final recommendations on recreation facilities. It says pickleball complex. Chaplain Community Park would be a good location for pickleball complex. The HHI Pickleball Club has developed a conceptual plan for pickleball facility within Chaplain Community Park. The planning team reviewed this concept and recommends additional features that allow the facility to better serve the recreation and social aspects of this popular sport. The facility should provide a clubhouse pro shop that will allow for socializing between games, and provide adequate parking in addition to 24 courts and shelter proposed by the pickleball club's concept. So this plan, this master plan was long in coming. It had a lot of community input. Yes, the pickleball club folks were there. I heard them a lot of times before I served on town council. And we're ignoring our plan and the Parks and Rec master plan when we no longer provide pickleball courts that were asked for and set forth in this plan and reduce them to 6 at Chaplain. To me, it's an insult. I'm sorry to say it that way, but it's an insult. I understand parking numbers, but we've got to figure out a way to do this better. The 12 proposed at crossings, that's creative. I know we're not talking about that now, but if we're going to talk about where to put pickleball, we have to talk about both of them together. It's a creative idea, and some have said to me that, there's folks who like to play in different locations because of their level of expertise at pickleball. I can understand being embarrassed on a tennis court with having folks much better than me play next to me. So I understand perhaps splitting them up, but I'm extraordinarily concerned. I think you can hear this in what I'm saying, with reducing from our plan, the Parks and Rec Master Plan, from 24 to 6 at Chaplain Park. I had seen the photos of the refurbished courts, pickleball courts at Adriana Lane, Old Schoolhouse property. Last night, I stopped by there on purpose. I said, I can't go tomorrow without doing that. There were a couple of folks there who had led pickleball clinics all day long. It was dusk. It was about 5:30. And there were still people leaving from playing pickleball that day. I've forgotten how many they said. I think they said 96 folks went through clinics that day. So if you don't believe there's a demand, go to these pickleball courts and then go to Island Rec. Bless you all who played there for so many years, making do with the facility there. Thank you for staying with the sport. It's now our job to deliver. And I hope, and I thank Mr. Stanford and Mr. Alfred for pointing out that we have a dire need for living up to our pledge to this community. I believe, I know I made it, to find pickleball courts for our residents. And I'm not satisfied with this plan.
Okay, other comments? Please, let's not do that today. Yes, sir.
A lot of the planning here seems to be impacted by the need for parking. Following up a little bit on comments and anticipating a further audience comment. If we have more bike parking, number of automobile parking needed. I would at least like that to be taken into consideration because there's really no reference to bike parking here at all.
And I'm happy to jump in. Certainly, we can allow an offset of required vehicular parking by accommodating bike parking at this facility. I do want to point out that the baseline for starting the conversation for the master plan was the Parks and Rec master plan, our plan, and that's what was brought forward in February initially, and we received feedback. I think one thing the Parks and Rec master plan maybe didn't do was understand the competing interests of beach goers and trying to program in the Parks and Rec elements a little bit in the vacuum. But we did program it based on the direction that was in our plan and the master plan. And we did have 24 pickleball courts initially and did get feedback. So, we're representing the input and feedback that we got at each step of the way. And whatever council provides as far as direction at today's workshop is what we would recommend, back to council, with a little bit of assessment to make sure we can accommodate it, in the final master plan. So, but it has been iterative, and this is where we are today based on feedback.
So, Mr. Kinzelman, in your scope of looking at different properties on the island, did you find a location that was suitable for a 24-court complex?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I don't think I can speak for the whole system. I don't know it as well as you all do. I do know that we can, points are all well taken. Bicycle parking, which at 400 scale would not be reflected graphically, but certainly we would accommodate bicycle parking. And does that have a positive impact on our parking needs? Yeah, I pray to God, a lot of people are going to ride their bikes here as opposed to drive their automobiles. However, we still need to reserve that space, whether we pave it or not, for automobiles in case we do have that glut of auto traffic. Who knows how people are going to behave 5 or 10 years down the road? This is a future plan, not a today plan, right? So, point well taken. We've got to accommodate both of those modes of transportation. If 24 pickleball courts are the demands of the community, point well taken, Madam. We can find a home for 24 pickleball courts in here. Parking is going to be a challenge, but if we can put a man on the moon, we can find a place for 24 pickleball courts, I think, and accommodate the parking for it. It's been this sliding scale, no pickleball, a few pickleball, a lot of pickleball. We can accommodate that, but we just need a clear directive from this.
Sure. And I'd like to remind council that we've had conversations over the past several months and looking at all these different options. And this is what, that is being presented is what was the census of what was the best thing to have happen. Obviously now we've got a good number that don't feel that. And I wish that would have come forward a little bit sooner than right now because we could have been addressed. So I will just put that on the table. And for the community, as we've been looking to find locations to put pickleball and get the most number possible with a minimum of 24, that's what's been looked at as well.
Second while you're, or I don't want to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
So in terms of respecting the fact that people do bicycle places and that pickleball is important, I have been striving to find more places to put pickleball as well. And having had conversations with the pickleball community, they're happy that we are developing pickleball. This, in my very humble opinion, for a multitude of reasons, is not the appropriate place for 24 pickleball courts. You are within 2 residential communities, for one. You have a need for space if there were a disaster like there was in Matthew, for another. Those parking spots, while bicycles are certainly encouraged, are important because if you're a soccer parent, you do not drive or ride your bike to a soccer game with your cooler somehow tagged along behind you. You typically have quite a few other items like chairs and tents and other children with you. So the parking is important to those parents who utilize these fields for whether they're soccer or football or lacrosse or whatever sport they may be playing. In addition to that, as our town manager pointed out, this is a beach access, a public beach access that is heavily used. Those folks don't ride their bikes predominantly to the beach either. In fact, anecdotally, I'm sure we all know this to be true, but I'll tell you that they bring along carts and tents and chairs and a whole bunch of other paraphernalia with them, which they could not manage with a bicycle. And so the parking spots are important. And the location over where they are is the most out of the way place to put them that doesn't interfere with the other amenities that keep this an uncrowded Hilton Head character park. There are places, Mayor, which we have talked about across this island where additional and pickleball courts can go. No one is saying that pickleball is done. By any means, there are places where more pickleball courts will go across the island, more appropriate places than this. And I encourage all of those not to be hung up on one document from the past, as all of these documents are living documents and will be best integrated as we fully develop the scope of each of these parks moving forward that are in the best interest of the community, the residents, and the future.
Strange.
Thank you. I see sort of three levels of scrutiny, and we're confusing one from another. For instance, I think we came together today to approve a program of uses on this piece of property. We're also looking at a master plan which depicts where those program elements might go. And thirdly, we're also talking about elements of a site plan, which is operational issues. And so I think that in order to move forward, we ought to be focused on the program elements that we're willing to move forward and not try to get into the details of the operations of where something ought to go as opposed to something else. So if we're going to move this project along and in any accelerated way, then I think we need to today agree on the program. And the program elements are spoken out in those rectangles up there.
Agree with that.
Yes, thank you. Had some comment about pool. Previous workshop, I mentioned the pool, said I think there is a need for the pool. But if I put the pool versus, and there's other opportunities for the pool, like at the school site, which I would love to see us develop. But to me, pickleball versus the pool, pickleball wins out. In my mind, we've been talking about a 24-court pickleball complex, including the stadium court, for a long time. This is the first time I've ever seen 6 pickleball courts on this site. I don't recall it. If it was there, I just don't recall it. But I support the concept of the pickleball complex in the middle of this Chaplain Park site, which is surrounded by tree cover and other cover, which will tend to keep it buffered. So I support the concept of a 24-court complex. Thank you.
Have any other comments? Brown?
Public comment, Mr. Vizzo.
That's fine. And that'll come after, at the end. Yep, that's the way it's set up. That's what we approved on the agenda. Okay.
I don't know who wrote this background, but bringing back some memories for me. particularly when we talk about 1995, town acquired this property from the Fergusons and the Sing. Very much personal to me because that's my family.
Could you speak up, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
How's that?
Okay, thank you.
I also was a bit intrigued with the aerials when the land was open. We were still farming land then, that's why it was open. And this one sentence in the background talks about the Chaplin Community Park has remained the town's largest and most diversified public park space on Hilton Head. Now, why do I think that's important? Because I agree with Councilman Ames. We are here today to talk about big picture and programming. What I'm hearing from our staff is that we have to make some compromises here in order to maintain this park being diversified. It seems to me that we would have to give up something if we're going to do more of something. And I just want us to all be aware of that fact as we're moving forward, trying to make a decision today. So with that, you know, from what I see, we have 0 pickleball here today. We now have 6. I'm willing to squeeze a little bit more if we can, but I'm not willing to give up anything that's currently been in the park or proposed here to do that. I'm also one of those that was very adamant about us finding a pool, an additional pool. I listened in on the Public Planning Committee meeting a couple weeks ago, and staff has produced this condition and trends report. It talks about how our average median age continues to go up and that young families are leaving Hilton Head. So as I welcome all of those that are having the need to play pickleball, I'm also welcoming our families back. I had the pleasure of visiting the rec center over the weekend where they were having a swim meet. And I told you this already, Mr. Mayor, but things have changed from the 90s when we used to jump over the fence to get in the pool. It's a huge demand for our young folks and our families here on Hilton Head, okay? So I'm not today proposing that the pool has to go here, but what I am being very adamant again is that we have to find another spot on Hilton Head for a pool so that we can provide that for the other segment of our community, which is just as important as the pickleball players. I'm just gonna take a couple steps forward here because I'm in support of this master plan. Again, if we can squeeze some more pickleball, let's do it. I'm happy to see that we are thinking about the intersection improvements. I know that we're gonna be having a more deep conversation about the entire 278 connectors, okay? So I think this is an important stretch. I also wanted us to think a little bit about the parking breakdown. I know that there's right now 300 spaces, so to speak, for beach parking. I mean, we all know that parking is parking. You can't necessarily designate it for beach or otherwise. But as we're having this bigger conversation about parking on Hilton Head with our other facilities and paid parking, you know, maybe there's opportunity for us to really have a conversation around shuttle programs, particularly since there's so many short-term rentals in this area that are using this as an access. Maybe there's an opportunity there. And the last one I would mention is the hurricane debris location. We will be investing a lot of money into these fields if we go into to change the orientation of them. Maybe we need to consider the Mid-Island Tract as a potential debris management center. I don't know the details on that. I'm just putting it out there for us to provoke a little thought. I know we used part of it last time we had a hurricane, but that is not something that is currently being used with this much programming. Okay, so maybe there's an opportunity there. Those are my comments, Mr. Mayor, and when you're ready to push forward, I will be as well.
Thank you. Mr. Ames.
Thank you. I wanted to emphasize my comments so that there's no ambiguity. I'm in support of the program, but I'm not yet satisfied with how the elements on the site relate to one another. And so, like any other transition from program to master plan to site plan, I'm expecting there to be some changes that recognize some more operational practical issues. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think, I don't think that if we had more than 24 pickleball courts that would be a problem. So programming aspect here, if it's 6 courts, if it's 8 courts, and again, when the document was produced, it may not have been done with the knowledge as to what was appropriate at this location or not. So I would still say that I would like to see this plan move forward with the elements that are there, but I'd also like to continue looking for a home for 24 courts, to have a full complex. If it is 36 courts we have, I don't think that they'll be open, right? So when we're talking about doing things right, we're hearing from the public, we're hearing from everybody. Let's really look at it and go, okay, we need to improve this park. It does not meet the current plans for our community. But let's also look at the elements that are going to go there and determine if it's 6 courts, if it's 8 courts, but where else can we honestly put a true facility that makes sense without the impact to the neighborhoods? It's a tall call. Any comments on that?
Mayor, my colleague, Mr. Brown, asked about public comment being divided between the 2 parks. I know the program, the plan is,
We can change it.
I think it'd be good to hear from the public at this point on this park.
Are there any other comments or questions for Sean or Mr. Kinselman?
Does the Crossing Park have flexibility to have 24 courts?
But it has to give something up.
Yeah, okay. I think that's part of our conversation for the next Crossings Park conversation.
That's a good reason for us to continue prior to hearing public comment. There might be some answers that come up in that discussion.
That was
would
my,
change the
that
comments.
was my original thought process, and that, that since there's elements at both, Ms. Bryson, I'm going to go back and just ask if there are any other comments regarding this facility outside of pickleball. I would open that up now because I think pickleball is its own conversation, which could be handled at the end after we have that second presentation and we talk about pickleball there. So with that being said, do we have any comments on this park from the public outside of pickleball? I see one hand in the back right. Couldn't see you sitting back there.
Mr. Brown, you didn't tell me, Councilman Brown, you snuck in the rec center pool over the fence. Oh my God, it's on TV too. I think I caught some of your buddies though one time. So I just want to just say that I think this is Councilman Ames and Councilman Brown stating that we're talking about program elements. That's why I always look at things too and go to the master plan. So the program elements up here have done a great job in putting them together based on all your current meetings that you've had with this. A couple things I want to get down in the weeds a little bit. We want to make sure that we have storage for our outdoor rec programs, as that seems to be growing. And we want to make sure we have storage not only covered storage, but also outdoor storage where we can store like our kayaks and some of the other things that we've been using. And that's simple. We want to make sure that the fields are lit. We talked about soccer and this being a soccer field, making sure they can be lit, not only the current field as it's marked off, but the large field. With the technology nowadays, the lit fields with the LED lights, you'd never know that they were lit and being going. Secondly, we want to make sure that we have bathrooms over at the dog park. And whatever we decide the location of the pickleball people need bathrooms close by. So we want to make sure that happens too. And finally, the basketball courts. We want to, instead of having one, we ought to consider two and look at the model that we have at the rec center. They're middle school courts versus the full-size courts. So I think we ought to consider that as part of the expanded program elements. And finally, making sure the playground is covered and shaded. And those are my comments there.
If you'll state your name and who you're speaking for.
Oh, everybody knows me. Come on. No, Frank Soul, Executive Director of the Island Recreation Association.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, sir. You had your hand raised up?
Hello, Jack Daly. I'm just speaking for myself. Now, we've been working on this about 6 years in Parks and Rec, and in that time,
Tell us your name, please.
Jack Daly, D-A-L-Y, and in that time, we had always found the same problem of 10 pounds of sand, a 5-pound bag, and then we purchased Barker. And people kept saying, put this element here, put this element there. And I said, well, I won't consider it because you don't have room. And that encouraged the town to go buy Barker. So imagine we look at this as a system. And if you put 3 artificially turfed soccer fields at Barker that would play in any weather condition, any time of year, wouldn't get torn up. You know, we had a soccer field at Crossings closed for 3 years, Frank. They got torn up. That would relieve pressure off these soccer fields. And perhaps if you took the 3 field to the right, did the correct orientation north-south, removed 1 field, you would discover 3-4 acres for 24 pickleball courts, maybe that in a pool, maybe the parking that you need. But let's not forget the system we're working with. You find some fields going to play no matter what, no matter when, and that could make a difference. And I want to thank Sean for his very parental comment about shade. It takes about 1 visit to Chaplin to realize that there's no shade. So hopefully next month when this comes to Parks and Rec, we'll have some more of that boots on the ground, tactical parent coach tidbits come out that could help us win this process. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, sir.
I'm Wayne Lilly, president of the Board of Public Tennis. Some 20 years ago or so, we were involved in the creation of Chaplin Park, and it was really the foundation of our company going forward. It was public tennis courts and access to tennis, affordable access to tennis. And I just want to make a little comment about tennis and the need for tennis as we go forward. I'm glad to see you all continue to support tennis at Chaplin Park. I think long term, it'll make a lot of sense to have neighborhood parks like Chaplin, as well as the tennis center that we're talking about, which is more extensive, possibly on the Marshland Road parcel. But I also want to kind of like talk a little bit about demand, real quickly about demand, and about just how easy it is to have a mindset on Hilton Head that's a little different. Because there are hundreds of courts here, of tennis courts, in gated communities and academies and resorts and clubs, and that doesn't really service the public. So what's interesting is the growth in tennis in recent years has been actually explosive. It's a little less talked about because it's a mature sport as compared with pickleball, but it's growing like crazy. Where is it growing? Public courts. That's the exciting thing. So as we go forward as a group, I hope we keep public courts front and center, because that is where the growth is in tennis. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, sir.
I'm John Parsons. I'm a member of the
Parks and Recreation Commission, but I don't speak for them because we haven't had an opportunity to review this yet. So these are my own comments. I think the staff and the consultants have done a great compromise job. I think it's perfect, with a couple of exceptions. I worked on the Parks and Recreation element of our plan, and during that period, it was 3 years ago, there was no demand for a swimming pool from anybody on the island. So we eliminated that. It's not included in the Parks and Recreation plan. Things can change, but there's no basis for it. Pickleball argument to me is simple. There's an explosion in the sport, but we don't know where it's going. I think we ought to accommodate in small patches all over the island, 6 or 8 courts, and leave the argument for whether we're going to have a regional attraction for tournaments, which is what the purpose of the 24 courts is. If we're going to do that, let's do that instead of part of this master plan. I don't know whether it's Barker Field or the airport, but this is the wrong place to put an attraction where hundreds of people will come from all over as a tourist destination. I agree with Ms. Becker that this is the wrong place to cut portals for views from 278, because with those portals comes noise. And that is one noisy highway. The Chaplin Linear Park has been something I've worked on for years, and I'm very disappointed in the way it's been treated here. Somebody decided that the Chaplin Linear Park, which goes through the middle of along the edge of this park, is not included in this master plan. It just makes no sense to me at all. At least we ought to indicate that there's a pathway through here. We'll design the details of later. It's mentioned, you see the highest label says Chaplin Linear Park will come here and stop at the gateway to the park called the Heritage Island Heritage Gateway. Please just give an indication that goes to the ocean. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, sir. Mr. Babel.
My name is Frank Babel, and you know what I'm going to talk about. First of all, there are a lot of fingerprints on this, and it's taken a long time, but my hat's off to Jen and Taylor and you folks for putting in your comments and taking it this far. We're close. I'd like to look at where we are and where we live. In Sea Pines, Palmetto Dunes, and Shipyard, there are very important access points, just as this. This is one of the most important access points to the beach that we have on the island. In those 3 communities, what they've done is put up a bunch of bike racks and encourage people to get there on bikes. They have nice facilities to get up, they have bike racks. That's what people do because there's simply no place to bring a car. There isn't any conversation here other than what's been brought up, the thing in the plan. The word bicycle doesn't exist in any of the master plans. And I suggest that this is a place that you need to put bike racks for parking for hundreds of bikes. Pickleball. If you look at the pickleball courts in Palmetto Dunes, if you go down to South Beach to play tennis or pickleball, you don't drive a car because there's no place to park. So you ride a bike, okay? And so the pickleball courts need to have a lot of bike racks. There's no bike nest up here. There's no mention of it. We've got to have ways to get people to these places and a place to park, okay? When we look back 20 years ago, we had 6 bike rental shops. We now have 36. We have more than 1 million bikes that go on our pathways. And we have e-bikes that go all around the island. When the bridge of the island is complete, we're going to have more. It's going to be interesting. We are slowly but surely going through a cultural change. And we need to begin to experiment with smaller, more nimble, less noisy trolleys as part of our alternative transportation system. We need trolleys and we need facilities for bikes. That's parking and places to get to the beach. So we encourage the new transportation division to be given the nod by you folks to look at an alternative transportation approach. Safe access to key points, bike racks when they're needed to help people get their minds out of cars and into alternative transportation. It's a lot less of a hassle and we save the planet a little bit. Bike Walk is here to help. I could show you a lot of the things that are brought to the beach in the back of bikes. It's like people are moving. You know, they have coolers, they have beach, trust me, they'll use it. So please, give some thought to that, and future things, put something out there that says, bikes, this is where we're gonna park them. Access to the beach, this is where we're gonna put a bunch of bike racks. This is how we're gonna get there, and this is where we're gonna park them. And the million people we have on bikes, they have a place to go and get to the beach so they don't jam up Coligny like we are now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, seeing none. Sean, we'll go into the next president. Oh, we do?
Yeah, it's Chaplin and Dreesen. Can I speak about these two parks?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So my name's Carl Braden. I've lived in Chaplin for 25 years. I use Dreesen Park and Chaplin Park on a daily basis, both to walk my dog and to ride bikes with my daughter. My late father created public tennising to bring the public tennis to this community and worked with the mayor to raise funds for this purpose. My main point I want to make about Chaplin Park is that it's already an amazing park. The tennis courts, basketball courts, and dog park are all wonderful and really just need improvements, in my opinion, but I'm very pleased that the tennis courts are to remain where they are. I believe the basketball courts should remain pretty much where they are, close to the community which uses them the most. And I think that the pickleball courts are very well suited to the Singleton track because it's isolated and pickleball is very loud, and it could accommodate the number of courts you're talking about rather than in the center of Chaplin, in my opinion. So just as Chaplin has no fence and is perfectly fine, the residents and guests of Bradley Circle and Greater Chaplin always had pedestrian access in and out of Dreesen Park until May 15 of last year when this legal access easement was abruptly closed off. We were not given any valid reason, only that there was a safety concern. And having used this access every day for decades, I know this to be a mistake. And in fact, it was people like myself, runners, walkers, bikers, going back and forth at this location, which kept the park and our neighborhood safe for all of these years. Since both Bradley Beach and Bradley Circle were connected dirt roads, I've been going back and forth with my dogs. And it's an established route for bikers, walkers, runners, and the closure turns everyone around and sends them to the highway to ride alongside the busy 278 and so on. So it's been very disruptive. It only serves, in my opinion, to make this non-gated community more like the gated plantations, which it is not. Residents and visitors to Chaplin have always enjoyed the freedom of movement between these two parks, and for many reasons, not just walking, riding, or getting to the beach, but also for Native Islanders visiting family. Native Islanders and other locals have been using this path long before newcomers arrived. These are all originally Native Islander lands here. This closure was made without the knowledge that this is, in fact, a written legal access easement signed by Mayor Peoples. Nearly every owner on Bradley Circle bought their property with this access gate having been in place for decades. This closure has fundamentally disrupted the locals' way of life and restricted the best beach access, safest beach access for this neighborhood. It's hard to imagine who would not enjoy having access to a beautiful neighborhood park. Certainly all of the visitors, bikers, walkers, and others love this park and enjoy moving between both of these parks. Therefore, on behalf of the residents who have been here the longest, we want to ask that this legal access easement be restored for the March 1st reopening, please, and a security camera.
Time is up.
Security
Time is up,
camera and a
sir.
lock at night
Thank you.
would be more than enough to prevent or
Thank you.
to handle the safety
Do
concerns.
we have
Thank
any other
you.
public comments? All right, so Sean, now we'll move into Crossings Park.
Thank you, sir. Am I doing this okay now? So, Crossings Park, again, I'm gonna walk through the same program that I did for Chaplin. Project process, site history, existing conditions, the plans that you've seen in workshops, earlier, same schedule, February and June. Excuse me, include the assessment and then the draft master plan that's before you today, where we'd like to get input and feedback, going forward. So, again, going back, this all emanated out of the Parks and Rec master plan, which was adopted, along with integrated into our plan, the town's comprehensive plan. We began taking, a look at the site after the adoption, as early as September of 2021. And for about a year, prepared preliminary concepts, in preparation of presenting at a workshop in late September. We took that feedback, and we came back to a town council workshop in February, of last year. You provided input and feedback, we revised it, brought you another concept in June, where we got input and feedback, and we revised that as iteratively to add, based on consensus, to bring a master plan here before you today. The Crossing Park timeline, it's similar to Chaplin, although when the Cross Island was being contemplated, the acquisition of this property along Helmsman's Way, basically at the foot of the Cross Island Bridge, was considered. Much of the property was placed under a conservation easement, for wetland mitigation for the Cross Island project itself. But the town acquired it in 1992, and it was developed as the first recreational facility on the island. Planning, started in 1994, and the park opened in 1996. Bristol Sports Arena was then added in 1997. It was helped funded by a philanthropic donation by the Bristol family. And the Bristol Sports Arena is what we would call our skate park, our Bryan Extreme Park, I guess. It'd be extreme for me to try to use it, I know that, with a skateboard or something, but roller hockey and some other activities occurred there. And so it was evaluated in the 2020 Parks and Rec Master Plan, which informed our initial discussions for the park. So the park programming that exists today, and we can walk down the list, but it has the Bristol Sports Arena, which again is mostly the skate park, roller hockey, basketball, and it's time to reinvest in that facility. It has what we call a multi-use field. It's really, there's an open meadow and there's a multi-use field that's used for various activities, pickup games, and so forth. It is the primary location for commitment to Island youth baseball. And so you can see that it has 3 fields. The current dimensions of those 3 fields are 2 at 210 feet and 1 at 290. And as I mentioned, as part of the Cross Island project, significant portion of this property was part of a wetland mitigation to advance that important project. Within that wetland area, there are some user.
Excuse me, can you trace that more slowly so people understand the significance?
Yeah, and we'll be able to see it a little bit better on upcoming, but this little red line that really hugs almost every bit of the programming, it really wraps around these fields, and comes all the way down, it takes up almost the entire center of the property. So everything south of what you see in green there, and excluding the skate park that's on this bottom left, is really incorporated into that wetland mitigation. There are some user-created pathways in there. It's our sort of de facto BMX bike riding facility, and there's a lot of little hills and stuff that lead there. But it's an agreement with Army Corps on that wetland mitigation. There is some town-owned property across Arrow Road. It's sort of the interior of this property here on this curve that we'll talk about here as well. And then the town also owns property between Helmsman and Palmetto Bay Road along the section. So the preliminary plan that was brought forward in February of 2022 had some upgrades to some areas and then some programming changes. There was a recommendation in this plan to include an upgrade to the Bristol Sports Arena by covering it, increasing playability from weather and also shade, so you get some more play throughout the year. It was an upgrade to the skate park, roughly in the same location. It included a dog park, and the dog park is proposed in the center of the Hague Point Circle. The picnic meadow, it was a retooling of some existing area on the property, but not having the sort of multi-use field that currently exists. There was a destination playground that was incorporated into the overall park design. The wetland preserve, really maintaining, and as we get into a couple iterations as we move forward, there was some contemplation of slight encroachments into that, and we'll talk through that before we but really still preserving the wetland as it currently exists. The recommendation on this plan shifted the number of fields, formal fields, from 3 to 5. And what was proposed in February of 23, as I mentioned before, there used to be two 210-foot fields. This increased it to 4 200, so doubled the number of that size field. And it increased the 290-foot field to 300-foot. It introduced a Champions Walk and Plaza to pay tribute to all of those that had have history and legacy in the Highlands baseball history here. It added a pump track, which is sort of a new, well, relatively new, it would be new amenity with this extreme park. Great addition, it was included. And then Arrow Road Mid-Block Crossing, which was located here. So that was what was presented in February. The feedback that we received at that workshop was a request to explore adding a second 300-foot field. There was one proposed, adding a second one. Also to explore an opportunity to include a 400-foot field. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And then a request to shift the mid-block crossing further away from the sort of interior. So I'm going to talk through a little bit about the expanded, the assessment looking at the expanded ball fields. We took an assessment of some major league fields and also some here relatively local. The Savannah Bananas field does have a 400-foot dimension in straightaway center field, but dimensions down the line are 322 and 310. You can see where the Atlanta Braves play, that their dimension is 400 in straightaway, 335, 325 down the line. I had to throw in Yankee Stadium because I'm sorry, I'm from New York, but that was the team I pull for. They have the deep center field at 408 with Monument Park out there, so I have to add that in. But only 318 down the line, and the short porch and right's 314. And begrudgingly enough, I added the Boston Red Sox field, which is one of the oldest fields, maybe the oldest field left in Major League Baseball. And it is so irregularly shaped, it's hard to evaluate, but they have a green monster in left field. It's only 310 feet down the line in left field, and I've seen some really great things happen in that park and have been heartbroken. But in 380 down right field, and there's this little jog at 420, but you can see it's primarily under a 400-foot evaluation. You look at the high school field, which has a unique shape. It's got its maximum dimension in left and right center field, and then it cuts straight across at a tangent, like kind of slicing off the arc a little bit, but it's 345. And so that's what we have here locally for comparative. Most people, I was a decent baseball player, not like our friend Kevin Tyler, but I could never hit a 400-foot ball. Give me 1,000 chances. Mark pitching to me. So to really, for a 400-foot field, you really have to, if you're playing on a 400-foot field, you're probably playing in some kind of AAU travel ball or some pre-AAA type of. So there are other opportunities looking at the high school fields where you play on these 330 to 350-foot fields, but not necessarily a field that has 400. So it shifted our thinking as we're programming this master plan. Not let the 400-foot field drive what we brought back. But we did do the assessment. And so what we brought back in June from a preliminary plan was, again, maintaining the covered area at Bristol, the skate park, the dog park. All these remain primarily in the same location. We had this master plan, and we did look at a 300-foot field in a couple of locations. So we did look at another 300-foot field location here, but we got feedback to not encroach further into this buffer along the edge of the property and toward Wexford. And also importantly, you can see this red dotted line that we talked about a little bit for the edge of the delineated wetland mitigation area. It encroached in there, so it would require a request to the Army Corps to adjust that, to modify that wetland area. So this included the 4 210-foot fields, the 1 300-foot field, the Champion Walk Plaza pump track, and then the mid-block crossing move. The feedback at the June meeting added some additional elements. And so I'm going to talk through the feedback, and then I'll show you the resultant upgrade to the master plan. Discussion about providing 12 pickleball courts in close proximity to parking. Include the pump track area that was proposed in this area across Arrow Road in the area near the skate park. Review the opportunity for connecting pathways with a crosswalk, the intersection of Arrow and Helmsman's Road. And so in this area here, provide angled parking along both sides of Helmsman's Way. We had showed a plan that had it on this park interior side, but to show it on both sides of Helmsman's Way. Explore alternative parking configurations at baseball fields. And so when this was presented before, that had the field that encroached into this wetland area, it was requested that we look at evaluation of this parking to see if it could be manipulated, reconfigured to allow a second 300-foot field. And still accommodate the parking program that's needed for this. And also instead of the 400-foot field that was and then there was a request, concern from Wexford about encroachment into this tree line and buffer along this section, along with it. So for the alternative assessment for parking configuration, and the 300 field to accommodate 300-foot field. This is one option. So it did reconfigure this parking. It shifted the second 300-foot field from what was previously proposed here over to this section. And so you still maintain 5 baseball fields. You do get a second 300-foot field, but it does have some implications. In order to meet this parking program, it does still encroach into this buffer on the Wexford side, and also into that wetland. On the Wexford side. It's not organized quite as well as the previous program on the master plan, and it creates a less of a entry feature and drop off at both sides of this park program facility. So that was alternative 1. And then there was a second alternative that looked at some potential modifications here. This would be similar on this edge of the field to what I mentioned for Fenway Park. It would have to be a shorter dimension, maybe with a higher fence. 275 is what was there. And then this area here in the left field, bottom left corner here, would be an encroachment into that wetland mitigation area. And so we've shown it how you could accomplish it, but it would require some consideration by the Army Corps. You don't quite get the dimension here. You'd have to look at an alternative treatment. And then maintaining the 5 fields, overall in the program for the site. So based on that evaluation, what we brought forward for, under the current revised master plan, is as follows. Maintaining the Bristol Sports Arena upgrade and covering that facility to increase playability, maintaining the skate park, the dog park, picnic meadow, and destination playground as previously discussed, maintaining the wetland preserve, committing to the 5 ball fields as originally programmed, 4 at 210 feet, 1 at 300 feet, maintaining that Champions Walk and Plaza, including the pump track close to the skate park in this area. It does show, on this master plan, a potential encroachment into this wetland area. Brian McElwee, I know he's been excited in researching a bunch of things. We will look at every opportunity to maintain it without that encroachment, but we've represented it here in case it's needed to let you know of that condition. Talked about the Arrow Road mid-block crossing. Intersection improvements to cross Arrow at Helmsman. This does have the integrated recommendation from the June workshop, and this proposes 12 pickleball courts, restroom and associated parking down here where initially the pump track was contemplated. So it is a commitment to 12 pickleball courts in that area, along with associated parking and restroom. And it makes some sense to have that, as it's not as connected as these other uses are to each other. And then pathway to Palmetto Bay Village and Palmetto Bay Marina is represented here. And this plan shows parking on both sides of Helmsman. We're proposing angled parking on both sides. We do know that this is an SCDOT roadway, and I'm not sure that they would support angled parking. So, but we would certainly make that request, and there will be some additional consideration necessary from council in order to implement that, whether or not it's something we want to take on as including that as into our inventory for that component. As we talked about a little bit with on the Chaplain, parking is important here. You can see the existing, I won't go through everything, but the existing parking total of 336 spaces. What's provided here, including the on-street parking and the parking bays, are 514. So we do have more parking that's integrated. We expect this facility to be utilized more often, and certainly integrating it as a community resource to attract users from the surrounding areas. Make this, and Frank will certainly add a bike parking. So make sure that we accommodate bike parking. A lot of people do ride here, obviously on their bikes with the trails, the pump track, and some other things. So making sure to accommodate that on this.
Sean, one thing to add, if DOT does not allow for that on-street parking on Helmsman Way, we still have advanced the parking count, because this is going to only increase in popularity, especially with added fields. So we're more than adequate parking, even without Helmsman.
And so that is a run through of how we ended up with the master plans before you today, and certainly would like to hear some input and feedback from town council and the community on this.
Okay, comments, questions from council?
Sean, I appreciate the thorough investigation that has been done at this park. I think the way you evaluated the use or feasibility of various ball fields there was thorough and complete. I would be opposed to any encroachment into the preserved wetland areas. I think we can work without doing that. So I'm pleased with the project. I'm glad that you ended with bicycle parking, because clearly that's something that we need. So good job. Thank you.
Other comments, questions? Ms. Price?
Yes, sir, thank you. First of all, I also appreciate the investigation of the different ball fields and the depth. And like Mr. Collin, I don't think I've ever hit a ball 400 feet. back where I used to play as a kid, we didn't measure. It was just whether or not we broke a window or I ran into a tree trying to get to first base. So, but I'd like to hear from our local baseball association. And I think Parks and Recreation has some input on the ball fields. I'm delighted to see the ball fields consolidated at one location. And also the multi-use soccer fields consolidation. So I like that idea. In fact, I did look back at Parks and Rec Master Plan and it says that. So it also did say to try to add 2 300-foot baseball fields. And I appreciate all the trials at accommodating that. And I hope that the number of fields that are 210 and the 300, I hope that's satisfactory with our local baseball association. And I'm hoping that the staff has checked in with them about that. I think it was the mayor who suggested moving the pump track from the other side of Arrow Road and having biked along that path, you know, from the power line right away through that nice wooded area over there. That's of crossing for kids if they're running back and forth. So I think that was a great idea. I'm giving credit to the mayor. I think he mentioned that in an earlier workshop. One thing I would say, angled parking and the regular kind of parking, whatever you call that, parallel parking, whatever works best, I'm okay with. But in driving out there Sunday afternoon, I noticed that when you make that turn off of Arrow onto Helmsman, sorry, where'd that come from? There's a curb right there, and so where the current parallel parking starts, that might be okay, but with angled parking, I don't know where you're going to start the angled parking, but be mindful of that curve there is all I'm saying. The other elements that we'd seen before, I support, and I was, as I said before, I was a way of adding pickleball courts separate from the other activities, the proposed program activities in the rest of the park. I think that's a good idea, and more to be discussed about pickleball later, but you know, I think that's a creative idea. And I think we'll hear from folks who support pickleball about the location.
Okay. Other comments? Zach? Probably.
I just wanted to say good work. This park continues to be refined and coming into its own. So that's it.
Okay. Mr. Ames?
Thank you, Mayor. I think this has potential for pickleball courts. My question is, how many acres do you need to provide parking for 24 courts in a stadium-like setting? Do we have enough acreage in that one spot to be able to do that, or are we again impinging on the 24 number in that area? And I'm just sort of simplistically saying 6 courts over at Chaplin. Can we get 18 courts here, achieve 24 courts? You know, let's try to figure something out and make a commitment to move forward. But the real question is the town going to be committed to a tournament / stadium complex and promote that over time, or are we going to have a fantastic pickleball facilities on the island but not go in that enhanced direction? That would be one comment I have. The other is the angled parking on Helmsman Way. If I'm turning down Helmsman Way and I find a parking place, now I have to back out. Where do I go to turn around? I've got a bunch of constituents at the end of that road. I'm not sure that they're going to be very pleased with that kind of situation, but we can raise it up the flagpole and see what happens. But I think there are real practical issues on a two-way sided angle parking. So, other than that, I think the baseball compromise is good, and I think we're moving in the right direction. I made a comment to the town manager that the parking seemed very formal, regimented for a Hilton Head Island solution, especially in this crossings environment. But that, as I said earlier, is a site plan consideration, not a programming one. Thank you.
Brown? No? Mr. Alfred? Okay. Public comment?
Thank you. I'm Jim Hicks. I live at 2 Berkshire Court, the Wexford guy he was talking about. First of all, thank you for working through that and not taking down the natural stuff we have and coming closer to the house. I'm very pleased with that. Really just mostly a statement of support, but there are some other additional issues that I'd like to see taken care of. And as Mr. Ames was talking about different areas, this might fall into more operational, but take some planning to go through it. And that is when the lights are on. Right now for the 3 fields, the lights are on for everybody. They're on all the time. It comes on when, dark and goes off at 10 o'clock. When it's working, when it doesn't, I call Frank and Frank fixes that. But it seems to me we could just do it on the fields that are being used. So that if you've got a field scheduled on 1, 2, whatever number field, and there's only a couple of them, let's just have the lights on those. When the weather's bad and nobody's out there, no sense to have the lights on and the light intrusion coming into the backyard. So I think that would improve both the operation and the, shall we say, the neighborly behavior that is. There's also some things I think could be done in terms of the speakers and where they're aimed, and go to experts there. Maybe rather than having the speakers back at the back where the stands are, have them out and facing toward the stands and not facing out toward the neighborhood. Same thing with the lights. There's been a lot of improvements over the years in terms of lighting, but there's a lot of things that are there. Overall, I think you guys have done us, we're the closest neighbors, but you've taken your neighbors into consideration. And some operational support, maybe with conversation, could enhance that further. But first of all, thank you, and thanks for taking care of the kids. Appreciate it.
Yep. Next. Cruden.
Alex Cruden, speaking for myself. It's a familiar scene. Once or twice a year, this group of very well-intentioned people gather in this room. And among the things we talk about and examine are pickleball courts. We've been doing this half a dozen years now. It's very interesting, and sometimes it seems to get better, and sometimes it scatters around into various problems or priorities or differences. I'm here to really urge that we go ahead. I think Mr. Ames' question, whether we can put 18 courts in that spot and set aside a stadium court for some other question or some other time, that's a really important question. Because if we can, that space, that could be done. It doesn't involve anything else that we've talked about. It doesn't involve moving roads or relocating anything else. Those are just woods that have grown up there. Add a little parking, add the other courts. It could be done right, you could start on it tomorrow. That's the kind of thing I'm hoping for. I really enjoy being with you, but I just as soon skip next year's meeting. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Alex. Other comments? Yes, Mr. Daly.
Jack Daly. I like this park design. Patty stepped on a point Patsy, excuse me, that was very important, the consolidation. These parks are operated by parent volunteers, and to have a different or multiple locations requires multiple tools, things to drag the fields, line the fields. Consolidation is important, especially in any kind of tournament or family setting where you have different kids of different ages playing. So consolidating here, and then on the flip side of that, you find another soccer field at Barker. That's a double win. And I would like to just make a note to Sean. It was 3 years ago at opening day, the opening pitch was thrown out by Mark Orlando. And my child, who was the catcher, said it had movement and heat. So you talk about hitting big home runs off of Mark Orlando. I don't know, it could be a little tricky. But I'm glad you have the baseball experience, because where when we were talking 400 class field, we were talking the one that fits high school. And if we can pull 10 more feet out, maybe 10 more, and then you can lift the outfield fence, you can get that 335 high school regulation size that opens the field up to a whole new demographic that hasn't been served. The middle school, public school field is bad. Prep field is mostly wet. So that would be a real get if we could somehow massage and pull and get that size field out of there. But it looks good, and the consolidation is good, and the extra batting cages as a tactical thing are very helpful. You could even add another one kind of where that Champions Walk was, because that's what somebody else's design. That was a fanciful adornment we didn't quite ask for. But thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Yes, sir.
Mayor, I could hit 335 if Ben was pitching.
Yeah, my name is Mike Malika, and although I'm a member of the pickleball club, I'm speaking as a citizen, formerly a snowbird, and now 3 years a full-time resident of Hilton Head, and I've been looking forward to dedicated pickleball courts for a long time. And Patsy, thanks for stopping by and seeing what the Adriana courts, how they're being used and how well accepted there are. And that needs to be the standard for anything moving forward. And Mr. Mayor, your comment about where can we put 24, it doesn't have to be Chaplin. We've never asked, I've never heard it asked that it's got to be in a specific place. It's give us the facilities that we need, and putting 6 all over the place isn't the answer, at least for me. I think you need a minimum of 18 or 20, 24 that we've all talked about. And we need facilities for playing tournaments in just locally. We're not talking regionally or certainly nationally. And I also want to comment on Island Rec, Frank's hiring of Sarah Mitten to coordinate this. It's certainly needed with the growth of pickleball and these facilities to make maximum use of them and to make them available to the community. She's going to need support, and it's grown well beyond what the Hilton Head Pickleball Club can administer by itself. So in closing, I would say I hope by the end of December, we can have a Christmas present and some pickleball courts. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other comments? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Mayor and Council, thank you. My name is Marjorie Schramm, and I live at 6 Salem Court. I'm 71 years old and have multiple body parts. One of the reasons I like pickleball is because I can do it. I'm not athletic at all, never played any sports. This is an excellent sport. I've heard us talk about soccer, baseball, basketball, skateboard parks, dog park, the disc golf in the future, roller hockey playgrounds. Those are all great, but I'm too old for that stuff. The demographics of our Hilton Head Island, according to our Chamber of Commerce, is that we have a population of 40,000 with the visitors of 3.2 million. The age group under 5 is 2.5%. Under 18 is 11.5%. And somewhere the census did not say the age group between 18 and 65. But I calculated that it must be 46.9%, because 65 and over make 39.2%. Those are our taxpayers. Those are our voters. I voted for you because you supported pickleball.
Still do.
You know, pickleball courts here and there. Yeah, we got pickleball courts. But the one thing that I've learned from playing pickleball is that when you play with people in a mix who are mixed level, you learn more. When you get to my age, motion is lotion. Socialization helps prevent dementia. This is all scientific fact. And I am really frustrated because every couple of months we get an email, oh, city council says this, oh, city council says that, and then it's taken away from us. And it's been years. And this is a population of older people. Please think about us. I'm a 71. You can't take too long. I'm not going to be around to play. I appreciate all the work that you've done, and I know some of you have been great components. I like the idea of the swimming pool because that's one of the other things that I can do, and I do belong to the Island Rec, and it's impossible to get a single lane. I do the backstroke, and these big arms are way in the way. So I don't care where you put it, just don't take forever, and we appreciate your help and concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Tunner?
Hello, Melinda Tunner, Palmetto Hall. It's been interesting watching the design of these two parks unfold over time. And my comment and question is more procedural in nature and has to do with the cost of each park once the design has been completed, which based on today's feedback maybe take even longer than you had planned. In the materials, you mentioned the fiscal year 24 budgets from the CIP with $2 million for Chaplin, funded through beach fee and TIF, and $550,000 for crossings funded through the H-tax and the sale of the land. When in the process will there be a discussion regarding the total cost of the park and the funding sources? It wasn't clear to me as you laid out the process because the final design comes after the town council approval. The total cost included in the CIP is $8.8 million for Chaplin and $13.2 million for crossings. And in my opinion, the approval of the project should include the total cost and funding sources and not just the conceptual plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, sir.
John Parsons again. I didn't give my address last time. 22 Planters Wood Drive. I don't need to do that. I want to speak to the nature park. Over half the acreage of this park is unbuildable. So it's been a recreation park for 30 years. I think it's time that we do something to emphasize the natural qualities of this park. I'm reminded of Newhall Preserve, which I assume you've all visited at one time or another. Very popular. It's smaller than the wetlands. It's 50 acres. I think the wetlands here are 60. I'm not talking about bicycle trails. I'm talking about 2 foot to 3 foot wide gravel or some material other than asphalt with interpretive signs along the way as they are in the Newhall Preserve. Otherwise, I think this is a very good plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Hang on, Frank. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Judy Bastian. Some of you have probably seen me before. I've been working on pickleball for over 9 years, probably before most of you even heard of it or knew what it was. I am very gratified today to hear people having so many positive things to say about pickleball. In the past, it's always kind of been, yeah. So I'm at least glad that people are getting the message of how important it is. And I had some ideas that piggyback on what the previous speaker said. And it's about age. You have to look at what the makeup of this island is. 5% of the kids are under 10, but yet we do playground after playground after playground equipment, all this kind of stuff. And then the under 18 is 11.5, soccer, baseball, all that kind of stuff. We can't do that. The median age here is 60, and we need to get some activities that we can do. That doesn't mean we have teenagers come to Adriana and play. It's a family event. It's not just for us. But I think you need to start looking at what your demographics are and try to do some activities for that. I have some questions that I'll let you think about and people can answer them at the end. I would like to know what the current per cost of a pickleball court is to build. Would it not be more economical to build all them in one place at one time? What's the cost difference for that? Also, I'd like to know the answer to his question about how much space it takes for 24 pickleball courts. That sounds huge, but that's the size of about 7 tennis courts. If we were talking about 7 tennis courts, people wouldn't be quite thinking you needed so much area. Although when you do have smaller spaces, you have more players, so you do need more parking. And now when I go to Adriana, I spend half my time waiting. I look at the steps I get. You know, I've got to go for 2 hours and maybe I play for 1 hour. So here are my questions. Cost per court, cheaper to put them anywhere. I'd like to know how many of you are against a big center. Are there going to be lights on any of the courts? If we're going to spend all this money, I think it would be nice, especially for the people who work, who can't go out till 5. A lot of times it's dark by that time. So that's going to be another whole segment of the population that can use the courts. I'd also like to know what all the negatives are about mid-track. I heard that somebody complained about it was going to be too much noise. Is that been proven, or is that just one person complaining? My other question is about mid-track. Couldn't we just take a corner of that and develop? It doesn't need to be in the center. Just take some area that could be connected to other places. The other question I have is the pump track. I'm curious how much that's going to be. I think this is a pretty new concept. Like I said, I've been working on pickleball courts for 9 years. So those are some of the questions I want to have answered at the end. And I don't know how many of you know, but pickleball does contribute a lot of money to the island. I mean, in our dues.
Thank you. I've got to cut you off there. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Thank you. Other questions? Whose hand's that back there? No one up.
Hello, my name's Trudy Shaley, and I've lived here. I purchased property in 2012, and I've lived here since 2014. At that time, I came to the island as a racquetball player, and that was my desire, and I wanted to play. So the only place I could play was at Folly Field, or Fiddler's Cove, excuse me. And when it was sold, or the owners complained, it was no longer open to anyone but owners. So I had to find another sport. Well, I was told, go to the rec center, they're playing pickleball. I'm like, what the heck is that? So anyway, I loved it. I went there. I became part of a family. I get emotional almost because this is my family. We formed a club, and our club kept building on pickleball. We kept introducing it. We kept adding portable courts. We had lines here. We had lines there. We didn't have courts. Thank you, by the way, for Adriana. We worked on that forever. Adriana needed, who's going to play tomorrow? So they would text me, are you playing? Is Lobster playing? Is Dinker playing? Is this one, that one playing? And I was like, oh my gosh, quit texting me. So I opened up a website called Adriana Family. And it was very appropriately named because everyone could go there and see who's coming tomorrow, who's coming today. And it's been a part of my life. And I can't thank you enough for all your positive comments. Miss Patsy, I love the fact that you went back in history. As Judy said, we've been doing this for 9 years. I'm not new at this. These are your new people. They stepped in and said, we'll carry the torch, and they've done an excellent job, and you've listened, and I can't thank you enough. Where Judy left off, I've lost my train of thought, but this is one thing that my very dear friends gave to me, and it says a lot about keeping it community, keeping the 24 courts that Mike Gray, a professional racquetball player, tried to introduce 10 years ago and he was president of the Parks and Rec and got the permission from the town for 24 courts. He wanted a racket facility. He wanted racquetball courts included. He wanted tennis included. He wanted pickleball included, and he had a grand plan. A lot of the tennis players and racquetball players now or pickleball players will kind of butt heads, but why not bring us all together? We thought we had Marshland for 24 courts, a property down by the zip line, and all of a sudden it was gone. No, we're going to use that for tennis players now because pickleball's too noisy. The track that you mentioned, what a great idea. Quiet, nobody's going to hear and complain. But let's go grand or let's go home. And this is what my friends have given me. Pickleball isn't a sport, it's a lifestyle.
Okay, I've got to cut you off there. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, sir.
My name is Carl Co. I'm a resident of Shipyard, right down the block, or across the street. One, I just want to congratulate you guys on Adriana. I think they're a great example of what the court should be. And if you go there, as Patty stopped by, like Patty, it's a mob scene, right? There's a million people. Now people are coming in from Bluffton to play on the courts at Adriana. So I would just reiterate that the plan should be forward-looking. Pickleball is only going to get bigger. So it seems to me on a place like Chaplin, 6 courts is not enough. Like there should be more, the merrier, right? So I think for that kind of space, 6 feels like a little light. I have to say, I think this is a beautiful plan. It seems really well thought out. It's in a great location where there's not a lot of residential on 3 sides. So really not interfering with too much. And I think that's a great number of pickleball courts in a place like that. And I think, if we can do a great, a 24 court complex is awesome, but I think having north and south courts as well really spreads out the traffic a little bit and makes it a little bit more neighborhood focused. So you're playing with people on the south end, people on the north end, but you still have a major complex in between would be awesome. My personal opinion, and some folks have talked about it, I don't feel the need for a tournament level. Let Palmetto Dunes do that or Sea Pines. The benefits come to the businesses around anyway, the restaurants and the bars for people who are coming to see those things. So if we can get these courts done quicker and faster without trying to find a tournament level court, that would be my point of view. All right. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
You. Yes, Frank.
Again, it's Frank Babel. First, a comment about the parcel. I would probably shove another 4 pickleball courts and enough room for Alex's gravesite. You're welcome, Alex. But I'd like to talk more seriously. Congratulations to everybody for putting this package together. It's a very good program. I get it going underway. So I'm just going to talk for just a minute about getting to and getting away from this site. First of all, on the upper side, we took 2 years to get rumble strips around the Cross Island Expressway, which had been completely worn away, replaced. It took 2 years to put 2 strips down. We need to do something to make that a little bit more robust, because we're going to have a lot of kids coming over here when they get their little e-bikes. They're coming, and they're going to be going to these games, playing baseball and everything else. So we need a more robust solution. That's going to take a while with SCDOT to get. Secondly, we get down Palmetto Bay Road, there's a 2-foot pathway. We need something that's bigger. We also need to prevent kids from coming across Palmetto Bay Road, cutting across that median, and that's what they're going to want to do. So we have to think that through, okay? So that's this side. The other side, on Arrow Road, there's a half-mile stretch that has 6 bike shops. 6 bike shops, about 6,000 bikes being rented. Plus, the greenery is there. There's a ton of people going up and down Arrow Road. We need to take a look at a pathway there, okay? We need to time that so that it's being built at the time this comes online, because that's where the kids and that's where the people are going to run. We've had a lot of crashes, a lot of kind of bad accidents. We haven't had anybody killed. We've had a number of people who have been hit by trucks and everything else on Arrow Road as they go down it to go to the bike shops to pick up their bikes, to get service and all the stuff that, go to Sprout Mamas and so on and so forth. So please start looking at that in the CIP and maybe elevate it a little bit in the priority system. And I'm really speaking for Jim Hall, who runs the bike, the Hilton Head Bike Company, and he's a very solid person. He would be here, but he had an engagement. He couldn't speak. He would have spared this. So please think about that, okay? Thank you very much, and congratulations. This is a good program. Please move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Soul.
Frank Soul, Executive Director, Hilton Head Island Rec Association. Once again, excellent program elements up there, taking advantage of the property itself. I really like the fact that we did put some like sports together, meaning the pump track, the skateboard park, or what it'll end up, and actually covering Bristol Sports Arena. To be honest with you, hockey has gone away, and some of that is based on weather driven. And now that we have a cover over that, hopefully we can bring back hockey and some other sports and activities that are over there too. So I look forward to having that covered. Heard up here a couple people mention about lighting the pickleball courts. I certainly agree with that. Whatever number you come up with, I think this would be a great location to light those courts. Also heard the gentleman talk about the neighborhood concept about pickleball. Even if we didn't do a 24 and we did exactly what's now, we still are going to end up with 30 courts on our community. With the addition of these 18 and plus the other 12 that are already out there. So I just want to say that we're moving in the right direction, and however things come out at the end of the day. Want to talk a little bit about fencing. I probably should have brought it up on a chaplain, but we need to keep fencing in mind to keep people off of the fields, driving onto the fields. And that was an issue. We have that issue going on, and we need, as we redevelop, to kind of look at the key elements there. Also, we want to make sure that we put a restroom at the Crossings Park over by the dog park. If you look at it, it's a long ways away to the closest one, and probably, obviously, I know whatever comes out of the pickleball, whether it's 12 or 24, whatever, they'll have some type of, those type of things there. Make sure we cover the playgrounds. That's always going to be important. And then I heard Sean make reference to Fenway Park, but maybe we can consider utilizing a little fencing to part of that, similar to what Mr. Daly said when he came up here. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Charlie Quigg, and I serve on the Park and Rec Commission, though I'm not representing them today. On the west edge of the property, there is a bike path that goes from Arrow Road up Palmetto Bay Road to the Charles E. Fraser Bridge. And there's also a cut-through from Crossings Park that cuts over to where that pathway is, so people can get on the Cross Island Parkway going to the north. And that pathway is terrible. It's terrible today, and it would be unfortunate if it didn't get improved prior to the full development of this park. But I just wanted to go on the record and say that it's narrow, and I don't know how old the pavement is, but quite frankly, I don't even ride there anymore. I take the cut-through, but there's a problem with the cut-through as well, because there's a lot of vegetation on both sides, and the sightlines are terrible. And I've nearly run into other cyclists there. You have to literally come to a full stop, which is a good idea for safety reasons anyway, but other riders might not be as careful about that as I am. So I just wanted to mention those two things, the condition of the pathway that's adjacent to Palmetto Bay Road, as well as the need to improve the sight lines from the cut-through that comes out of Crossings Park going to Palmetto Bay Road. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I just have one additional comment.
Everybody's had their time. Thank you. Seeing nobody else, we'll bring it back. So, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the record, I've always been in support of biking on Hilton, and although I don't always say it, and I'm glad that we recognize that he was talking about Mr. Alex Cruden, not Mr. Alex Brown. Thought I was doing something wrong up here, Mr. Davis. I'm in support of this plan. The only comment that I would like to make, and I understand that we are in the master planning portion of this, but I feel the need to say this out loud as we move forward. we are investing huge amount into baseball in this particular park. And I appreciate that. But I want to make sure that the Island Rec Center is going to be truly in charge of programming here as they are at all of our other parks. Mr. Soul has made the decision to hire someone to take care of pickleball, which is important. I'm glad they've gone in that direction. But the last thing I want to see happen with this investment is baseball sort of become privatized here on Hilton Head, okay? This is a public investment. There are folks from the public that are playing baseball. I want to be absolutely sure of that as we're moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Alfred?
I want to say that I think that this is an excellent plan and we can move forward with it rapidly. I think there were a number of very good suggestions from the audience in terms of modest additional proposals, and I hope they can be included as well. And finally, I want to support the thought that having some pickleball courts in this park and some in Chaplin is okay. I would like to see added here another number of courts so that we get up to the total of 24 that has been the concept for a long time. I don't think they all have to be in one place. I think North Enders will be happy to have pickleball at Chaplin, less happy if they weren't there. I support this proposal.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Becker?
Just wanted to chime in for all of the pickleball people, a couple of comments. One is, since Adriana Courts have been completed, y'all are the most grateful people I have ever come across. Every day, someone has reached out and said thank you. Humble, grateful. I'm so honored to have gotten to know you and work towards that. I do have a question for our town manager, because as we worked on Adriana, there was a stage 1, stage 2, phase 1, phase 2, however, we were talking about it. And I'm wondering where that might be in the lineup to further the improvements at Adriana in the future. And if you're not prepared today, that's fine, but I do want to make sure that we don't lose sight of what that next step was in that space. And I wanted to let y'all know, thank you for how much you have expressed your gratitude. I've never seen that before. And I also wanted to say, with regard to pickleball, we've all had our eye on the ball. And just because we've talked about pickleball in this park or that park and the ones that are before us now, that does not mean that there may not become other opportunities for additional pickleball. So don't feel as though it's limited to what you see before you today. I would anticipate future ideas to come forward and exploration. So just know that we're still with you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ames?
Mayor, I support this, but I do have some observations. I mentioned angle parking on Helmsman Way. I really think that needs to be studied, vetted. My instinct tells me that what we have today is probably as good as it's going to get, parallel parking on one side. Secondly, there was a comment made about the wetland area being available for nature enjoyment and education. I support that, but frankly, I haven't walked the property, so I don't really know what kind of environmental assets it has, but I will do that. But if available, I think that opening that to enjoyment and education is important. On the pickleball, if land is adequate, then I would support going from 12 to 18, but I would also compromise if land isn't as available and support going 16 here and 8 at Chaplin. And the reason I say more at Chaplin is that would probably be a very appealing place for the visiting public to play pickleball. And I think it has merits there. So in any case, I'm supporting going in the direction of 24 courts. Lastly, I guess I'm asking the question, what are the next steps? We're talking about program today. That's policy. I think the next step is master planning, taking what you've heard today and coming back to council in the fairly near term, saying this is beginning to solidify what our investment's going to be. And thirdly, I would expect that sometime in the near future, we would have the opportunity to review a site plan more for our information, because at that point, I think it's implementation, tactical staff orientation, but I think town council needs to be able to weigh in from an informational standpoint. So I think those 3 steps are what we ought to be looking at, and I'm willing and supporting our going forward on both these programs today with the comments that have been made. And look forward to the master plan in the near future.
Bryson.
Thank you, sir. One quick thing about Adriana before, Old Schoolhouse property, before I forget, that turning radius coming off of 278 needs to be, crossing 278 is, we can widen the turning radius. And at Adriana, just as an aside.
Oh, Adriana.
Yeah. I'm talking about Adriana, Old Schoolhouse property, the turning radius off of 278. Sharp, it must be about 90 degrees. It needs to be back off, so whatever, good turning.
Referring to internal to the park?
Adriana, when you turn off at 278 and go into that area, that turning radius is close to 90 degrees, and it needs to come back so it's more angled, so you have space to make that turn and not have to do a sharp right turn into that. Sorry for the aside on that, but while we were talking about it. The other thing that I've heard is that please get us pickleball courts. The sooner the better. What I want to ask, and I'm glad Ms. Turner asked about the cost, because what I'm wondering is the site at Crossings, if the number of pickleball courts can be increased, how soon can that be done? Because I'm looking at Mr. McElwee's report on the CIP projects for FY24, and I see some funding there for Crossings Park, which says design, final, and permitting of renovation of existing community park, begin construction in FY24. So I don't know whether that means that we could, before this year is in, have pickleball courts on that site, I guess is my question. And 18 to 24, because what I've also heard is that please build us some, don't make us wait forever for another year while you guys try to figure out what to put in what parks. And some want a tournament setting, and if we can put more courts in a place for a tournament setting and have other courts where folks can be a part of that tournament and then come to the tournament setting, then perhaps that's some sort of compromise. But let's find a place where we can do it right away and not wait for a whole park to be redone.
Okay. Anything else? Anything else, Patsy?
Not at this
Okay,
moment.
all right. So, real quick, a little bit of history. Parks and Recreation on Hilton Head has always been somewhat of a challenge because of the limited spaces that we have. And when Crossings Park was discussed and developed, it was very, very contentious. We had a mayor at that point in time that did not want to see any recreation on Hilton Head Island. He wanted all the kids to be on sailboats. So I will tell you that right now you've got a council that is all in on recreation and wants the best for everything. Also, I just want to make it clear, because it sounds like it may not have been clear, but with 6 courts at Adriana, if it comes out, however it comes out in the end, but the current conversation, 6 courts at Adriana, 6 courts at Chaplin, 12 courts at Crossings gives you 24 courts. So we've never not talked about the 24 courts, but if we can get more, then that's great. And I agree that we need to get moving forward with additional courts. And if it's a Chaplin, we can do that, then great, let's do it. But it does need to move forward quickly. And I agree with a lot of other things that have been mentioned here today. But we are going to move recreation forward, all levels of recreation for all residents of Hilton Head, not just one demographic. It's going to be for everybody, because that's what we've always done, and that's what we will continue to do. So with that being said, do we have any general park discussion? Yes, sir.
Because of the public comment and because of your individual comments and because I'm trying to collectively add 1 + 1 up to 7, may I just paraphrase what I think I heard today for Sean's sake, for my sake, so that we can give our consultant final direction and get one more iteration? Is that appropriate for today?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let me jump in. So a couple of things. I'm going to look at Chaplin first. So we heard a little bit of, as an aside, Adriana Lane. I will say to you and Mayor and Council, we've had this conversation into the community. I've heard so much positive feedback from Adriana about the quality of our work, the quality of your commitment. I would like to call out our project manager who's in the room, Chris McVeigh. He may or may not be known in the room, but he is definitely known at that court. He's almost a celebrity. I was with him one day. So great job, Chris. And Brian gets upset, but Brian pushes forward as fast as we can to build, right? What I would say too, just to set or maybe reset expectations, what typically took a couple years to build from a concept planning, from a design, permitting, pricing, real construction, value engineering, back to council through budgeting process, that is a 3-year cycle. I want to set that expectation. So when we look at our CIP program, we placeholder dollars in the CIP so that we know it's a live project. So we have some dollars for master planning, permitting, evaluation. But permitting has been taking a really long time, as has finding the right pricing on construction. As an example, we just had to bid out a pathway for the second time to get better pricing because we don't have budget for it. So with that being said, I took a lot of notes and I want to go through Chaplin Park so that I have confidence to move forward, so that when we come back, most likely bring this through Parks and Rec Commission in March, Town Council in April, and as we start talking about fiscal year 25 budgeting including design, pricing, perhaps beginning construction in a fiscal year. I want to be really clear. For reference, we did put together some, in my opinion, some good staff reports that respected the Parks and Rec Master Plan. It's the only place I knew to go look to figure out what to do on each park. So I heard that perhaps we weren't looking at the Parks and Rec Master Plan. It's really lined up here. And over the iterations of Chaplin Park, we started backing into what we're doing. We backed into it, but respecting, right, the whole phrase, if it's not broke, don't break it. We know that there's soccer, there's dog park, there's beach, there's great oak trees, there's tennis, there's nature, there's parking. And so with that being said, as we try to balance everything, what I heard today is more pickleball, loud and clear. Can we fit more than 6? Yes. Is it going to cause some calibration of parking and maybe moving some things around and maybe some smaller sized soccer fields or smaller sized dog park? We will figure that out. I'm watching some notes over here. We will have for pickleball seating in some areas for spectator, right? Or for areas for me to go sit down at when I'm tired halfway through the game, because I've been playing some pickleball lately too. We will continue to take a look at a 24 court complex, and I assure Mayor and Council, you know this, and members of the public here today, please, we are looking, we are trying to find that site. Always bike parking, that's a site design, just like ADA, just like pedestrian connectivity, just like lighting. We will look at the disaster recovery debris site issue, whether that's at Mid-Island or we can be a little more useful I think, I wasn't here, but Coastal Discovery Museum, all of that area was used, so we have been looking at that. We will calibrate and balance the parking along the way. That's important, but we keep balancing the beach parking, and we know that through community service, public safety, we will be looking at the beach parking program in the upcoming meetings, right? Basketball, a pivot to 2 middle school size courts in a final location. We will consider looking at a pool at a proper, appropriate site, and definitely, Sean, great point, Beaufort County School District is getting ready to reset our high school based upon our voters and a referendum and some pricing. So I will, in the next couple weeks, meet with Dr. Rodriguez. Site planning, the design refinement, I didn't bring you Adriana Lane to select the color of the courts or the benches, but I think that's a good point by Mr. Ames. But as we look at the site plan, covered playgrounds, ADA spaces, get as much pickleball, pedestrian, trolley stop, bike racks, lighting, and bathrooms close to pickleball, dogs, soccer, right? We're going to refine that. We're talking conceptual program today. We will also look at some traffic calming measures through CastNet and on Singleton and on Berks. So absolutely. And again, as I said, we will bring this most likely to Parks and Rec to refine program planning, and then bring this back to you as fast as we can, most likely April at this point. That gives me the confidence to work with you as we're setting fiscal year 25 budget. I will not have final pricing, right? We heard that, and I would love to have that, but what we do is we provide an engineer opinion of probable cost. We lay out a price per square foot on any structure, and we lay out an infrastructure price based upon some takeoffs that we've already known, that we've seen. And as we work with an engineering consultant, we try to lay that out. We're never right. We build projects over 2 years, though. When we put that budget together, we know that most likely year 2, definitely year 3, we're refining pricing, and I've been very clear with you as we make those adjustments. I believe it.
Mark, if we review in April, will we have that engineer's estimate of cost at that time?
I heard yes. Heck yeah. Just like if we look back, when we took a look at Mid-Island Park, we brought forward a sticker price that was shocking, but we had an opinion of probable cost.
Yep.
That's going to be different today than if it's 10 years, right? As we looked at Patterson Park and Taylor Family Park, we brought to you an opinion of probable cost at time of master plan contemplation. At time of master plan, nice try, Kim. At time of master plan contemplation. So, all right, so that's it for Chaplin, and I think that covers everything. Sean, am I missing everything? So it sounds like we can bucket that up well. A question about Adriana, phase 2. Oh, what else?
The other comment I want to capture is, as we consider this park master plan, the aesthetic along that stretch of Chaplin to integrate the median.
Oh, okay. I just look at that as in our corridor planning, but okay, we can plus corridor. I was asked about Adriana. I'll just give a quick fiscal year 25 budget will include some more improvements to Adriana, right? We're just a couple months fresh of negotiating that land swap. We acquired that for free along with Barker Field. What a great success story last year. But in FY25, we will take a look at ADA. We do not have an ADA parking space out there right now. We just acquired that site. We've used our budget for the resurfacing of pickleball. Pathway from the parking to the courts are important, not just a 5-foot, but something significant. A bathroom, and more importantly, bringing utilities to the site. That's the big lift, bringing those utilities to that site. There's a basketball court right next door. It's like, as Brian and Sean say, it's like fixing one room in your house. You realize you got 8 more to go or 5 more to go. Landscape, seating, shade, and I heard today alignment with the drive aisle parking. And I'll get some input from y'all along the way. That will add up, but again, this is going to be contemplated as some placeholder pricing in FY25, then some improvements to the land, which is going to take some design, some permitting, and some real pricing until we really know the final price. Lastly, Crossings. Crossings, I heard a lot of support. Again, Parks and Rec, March, Town Council, most likely April, and then FY '25 budget. But budget will include the design and permitting phase, most likely. It's taking us anywhere right now between 4 and 5 months to obtain a land disturbance permit on work. So if we're building a parking lot, constructing a parking lot, even if it's a simple extension, that's about a 5 months process. An engineer design on civil is taking about 4 or 5 months. So it's just the clock. Site planning improvements, pedestrian, ADA, bike parking, of course, I'm gonna keep saying that. A light imprint in the wetland area, vehicle parking less regimented. Helmsman Way, really study that on-street, angled versus parallel. Pickleball, increase as many courts as we can. Add an outfield fence for better playability. And Sean, I think I could strike you out even today. Bathrooms, probably not, I've got a bad shoulder. FY '24 priority to build pickleball, which is why I go back to, once you approve this plan as a master plan, the site planning is really the civil work, and that civil work drives the permitting, and then that permitting drives the pricing, and we will not have pickleball courts out there by December. Maybe this time next year, if we can make some decisions in April. Lighting, we heard today, turn only on when scheduling the field. That's an operational fix and away from the neighborhood, especially with some new light fixtures, the newer technology. Speakers away from the neighborhood, ditto with technology. I do know, based upon my conversations with Brian, that the HHPA has supported the fields. Brian, am I misspeaking? Is that accurate?
That's accurate. I think Kevin Tyler spoke with them and got their verbal input.
And thank you. And then again, as we get this figured out and brought back to you through Parks and Rec to you in April, then we can confidently start moving this forward in our budget. The next item on this is some exciting news. We've made decisions on parks, and we're starting to get our arms around being able to construct some of these parks. Important to you, important to me. I know that's why we're here. So once we make decisions and we're confident to know what the program is, we will construct them as fast as the private sector contractors and permitting through the agencies allow.
Okay, thank you.
Could I ask the town manager a question about that? Question, I have no idea what the answer or response, or if you need to think about it, but in thinking about what to do, I want to do everything we can to have the best parks that we can. But looking at the design and permitting, especially the permitting challenges, would it help if we do something in phases? So here's my suggestion. If we say, go ahead with crossings and say we can put 18 pickleball courts on that site on the other side of Arrow Road, can we have that as phase 1 and push that up and get that done before we do the rest of the project?
Absolutely, if that's the will of council, and that's what I believe I'm hearing, and that was always our intent. I do think that crossings is best bang for its buck to get going. Phase 1 pickleball, I think, is important, as is getting some more parking at Chaplin and some things. So we can pair some things out, permit those, but again, it's cost in hiring engineers to design your whole site is much more economical than designing one little space at a time. We will figure that out. We will have those answers in the budget, but I hear you say it's a priority above and beyond something else.
Mr. Mayor, I want to just sort of expand on that thought. This is sort of sounding similar to the conversations we've been having about our long list of priorities as a whole, okay? And I just want us to be as mindful and careful of staff's capacity, Okay, I think they have been doing a bang-up job thus far with bringing forward master plans, okay, for us to make policy decisions to help keep moving them along. They've already got a lot of stuff in the hopper when it comes to parks already. So I think if we're going to put pressure on Mr. Orlando to deliver, but we probably need to put pressure on ourselves as well. He's going to need additional staff and so on. So I just want to make us mindful of that as we start to cherry pick items that we want to press ahead of items that we've already said, hey, go do. So that's just something I want us to think about moving along. Not that I'm in disagreement with priorities. I'm just saying it takes more capital, particularly human capital, to move those things along expeditiously.
I'd agree with that, and as always, I rely upon Mark to lead that discussion as to what staff is able to accomplish and not, and that we fall in appropriately there. So obviously that's his directive to us. But you know, these are the things that we've been talking about for a while. They've been in the hopper and working forward. So you know, hopefully it wouldn't overtax anymore. But I agree with you 110%. Yeah.
Just because I want to, and not because I want to belabor it. As we do have that discussion, I want to make sure that all of these being priorities, for me, a top priority is not overburdening our residents with any considerations of increased taxes to cover costs, especially when we have ample income coming into the town that is now being diverted into other places. So when we come to that conversation, you will certainly hear me discuss that more. But parks are a priority, pickleball is a priority, all of those are a priority. The top priority is also making sure that our residents aren't burdened through their taxes. Thanks.
Thank you. Sean, do you have additional information for us?
Well, I'll cover the next item on the agenda, if that's okay. I'm excited in that we have a strategic planning workshop, I think, coming up here in the next couple of months, and also budget development. And I think those are the two opportunities for council to really weigh in on our priority and where we should be spending our resources. So along with town manager's recommendation. Okay. General park upgrades, I only have about 45 minutes more. No, I'm gonna run through this pretty quickly because I only rented those waters and we've been here a long time. I want to let you know that we have been working hard, recently completed projects, Woodhaven Pathway on the south end off Cordillo Parkway. You can clap for this one, Old Schoolhouse Park pickleball facility. That did turn out amazing. And I appreciate the team, Brian, Ben, Chris. As soon as we acquired that property with Mark's guidance from the county and council's wisdom, we put that in play and made that a world-class facility. Folly Field Beach access, that was going to be just a boardwalk replacement, really turned into an enhancement to that property. And we've completed that. So those have been completed. Patterson Park, Taylor Family Park, town council approved those master plans in December. We have RFPs for the town's first ever design build arrangement, which will provide continuity between the design professionals and the contractors that we get. We expect that those will be released this month, probably a 30-day review period, and award that contract. We are doing some vegetation maintenance on those properties, just if anyone asks, excuse me, to kind of clean up those sites. Islanders Pathway, as you know, you approved the Islanders Master Plan, and the early phase was to put that large pathway down the center of the park. Bids are due today. We expect to start date in February and completion by April. Shelter Cove Pathway, construction starting this week, with an expecting completion date by March 31st of this year. Again, trying to clear the path so we're ready for these others. Drazen Beach Park boardwalk replacement, again, is probably a little bit more than the original boardwalk that we contemplated. On schedule for completion by March 1st. There was a bunch of wood rot and some other things that we're also making sure that we're replacing. Shelter Cove Park expansion, that master plan was approved in February of 23. It's time to talk and strategic plan and budget for design and programming recommendation already there. And then finally on my list here, Mid-Island Tract. Mid-Island master plan was approved in 2022. Phase 1 final design is underway. It is a light imprint. Phase one with stormwater restoration will remove some invasive species, being sensitive to the habitats that are out there, pathway improvements, pathways, some pathway upgrades, looking at all the boardwalk bridges and replacement. Bathrooms are part of that. So I wanted to provide council and the community an update that we are busy, and as these new master plans come online, we will manage and bring forward for your consideration prioritization.
Thank you. Council, do you have anything else to add today? All right, seeing none, we're adjourned. Thank you all.